Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Duffington Talks. We're in episode 5 now. I think we've missed a week. Last week we released a Monday, so the podcast was postponed for holiday reasons, and we missed a week. We didn't really miss too much from last week, I guess. No, that may be a lie. I can't remember. My brain has already gone fuzzy. What happened 2 weeks ago? So my mistake. If we missed anything super important, tell me about it in the comments and call me an idiot for forgetting, because that's exactly what I am. If I have forgotten anything that doesn't get covered here, because I think some things will go over, and we'll start with the man that I'm obsessed with. Apparently, Donald Trump. That's a joke. It's just that we're going to tie off this Trump story arc, I guess, because he has his next he was in court, and his next court appearance won't be until 4th of December, without any trial. This is for the motions against him about the paying off Stormy Daniels, and he won't be in court again until December, and the trial won't start until January. Interestingly, sort of something we talked about 2 weeks ago with Trump's poll numbers going up. Yet there's been numerous articles since my last podcast about the fact that actually he seems now destined to win. Ron DeSantis shot himself in the foot by doing something that that's what I can't remember. Yeah, Ron DeSantis has shot himself in the foot. And I think he's gone slightly down in the polls. I think Trump has gone up and up and up, and Trump is just gathering momentum. And so, some of the poll analysis, or quite a lot of the poll analysis that I've seen, is saying that he seems almost destined to receive the Republican nomination. So that sort of neatly ties up what I was saying. There is some stuff about Trump with the more classified document stuff, more stuff about the 2021 insurrection, in the storming of the Capitol building. I think Pence has to testify for that. Pence received an order to testify, and he's not appealing it, so he's going to testify about that. And so, little bits here and there, but Trump is, and I think this is such, I'm sort of setting the story arc up here, the continuation of the podcast, and getting my comments in early about Trump, because I do think he has a real shot at the Republican nomination. American politics is such a mess. I mean, the way the Americans reacted to the leaked documents, which we're going to talk about in a second, was almost, it was naively comical, to say the least. So so Trump's out the way, just to leave that behind. Main two things we're going to talk about: animal protesters over Easter weekend and at the Grand National, and then we're going to talk about the big news of leaked documents. And it's big, not unsurprising, but I'm going to try and make a framing statement that will hopefully change the perspective of how people have been seeing. I don't like calling it modern history. People say it's modern history, just current events. I want to sort of not challenge, because I'm sure there are other people sort of saying this, but I really want to get the evidence in for how we perceive what's currently been going on in the geopolitical world. But we'll start off with the animal protests. So we actually had animal protests, not we personally, but there were animal protests in Brighton, Newcastle, Bristol. God, where else were there? Trying to find the section, which I can't do. Southampton, London, Nottingham, Bristol, Brighton, and Newcastle. And it was the same group that would then go on to disrupt the Grand National. Group is called Animal Rebellion, not Animal Extinction. Animal Rebellion. Whoops, bit of a faux pas. So Animal Rebellion protested. They occupied the meat aisle in a various selection of shops in the aforementioned places to protest the Easter tradition of eating meat, specifically eating lamb, um, and arguing that because um, it's a celebration of love and life, it's sort of oxymoronic and contradictory. This is from a Brighton article. Brighton-based university lecturer Richard McCalloch said that Easter is a celebration of love and life, and then it's a bit abridged, and then he said we currently live in a contradiction of these values by eating animals. And the one thing I say is this is your argument, which it is, because it goes on to say that it wants a kinder alternative for all life, and an essential part of loving, thriving, biodiverse future that we all want to see. And they want to transition to a plant-based food system program of rewilding to secure a future for generations to come. Okay, so there was, I genuinely thought that he absolutely fumbled the ball there, but he sort of got it with the climate angle. The reason why I will say is that the reason why I said that he's fumbling the ball by just simply going for the loving future argument is that, well, for a start, animals will eat each other in nature, and I know that sounds facetious, but it's not, because you're gonna keep animals. If we stop eating animals, the food chain will just naturally kick in. Except, I actually think that it would be a problem in this country because one of the top animals, the food chain in the UK, was the wolf, and we've eradicated wolves because they attacked us as well. So I genuinely think, I'm not an expert, but just sort of talking about how, with knowledge of how the food chain works, I think that would be an issue in itself, and it's sort of the presumption that, well, if we didn't eat animals, they'd all live and just live in some kind of natural unity. So I don't agree with that, and obviously that's me taking very facetiously what he's saying. What he's saying is that less animals die if we eat them, because we eat animals more than other animals eat animals, because we're living in a society where meat eating is massive and drastic, and so that doesn't negate the kinder alternative. And so I'll stop being slightly facetious and say that I don't see it as being kinder and more loving to not eat animals. And the reason why is that I'm not out brutally massacring animals, and I don't feel that that doesn't mean that you can't be kind and loving and any animals. I think that so long as you're killing them in a humane way, I don't see an issue with that. The Native Americans were not vegetarian. If we think about cultures that had the best animal treatment in human history, I think we have to look at the Native Americans. This may seem tangential, but they were not vegetarian. They were, however, and they weren't vegetarian. However, they ate meat infrequently. So meat was not their diet wasn't based around meat. Meat was just an addition to their diet. So, for example, if you your main priority, if you think about but this is the food pyramid. If you think about the food pyramid, meat is not at the bottom. You should be eating vegetables, fruits, and legumes and cereals more than you are eating meat. It's just that we've as a society we overeat meat, or we have an assumption of overeating meat. But just Google the food pyramid and tell me where meat is in the food pyramid. It's third, I'm pretty sure, on most food pyramids. Found one from from Harvard School of Public Health. Second is fruit and veg, healthy fats and oils, and whole grains at the bottom. Nuts, seeds, beans, and tofu. Fish, poultry, and eggs second. Dairy, second top, and then right at the top, red meat and butter is right at the top. Refined grains, white bread, rice, pasta, sugary drinks, and sweet and salt. Used sparingly. So, following in their food pyramid, obviously, the food pyramid is not a general way to live your life because all humans differ. But if we just take this as a source of information for, I don't know, it seems tangential, but I think it's important to know that there is a tendency to over-consume meat. I think that they say typically the best thing to do for people's diet is to have, is it 3 days meat-free, and then 4 days eating meat. That makes 7, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it does. I was questioning myself for a second. So they say that basically you eat meat moderately, but not daily. You should eat meat 4 times a week. I think is I've seen as the recommendation. I don't actually have any sources on me, which is my own fault. But the main thing you should be eating is grains and cereals, then fruit and veg, then your meat and your dairy, and then your dessert and your fat and your oil. I mean, oil, if you're sort of in the Mediterranean diet, I guess, well, they have slight obesity problems, so maybe that's in some Mediterranean countries, so maybe not the best. So again, slightly tangential, but I'm just sort of thinking about Britain specifically. I'll stick to what I know best, and just thinking about, people want to eat meat every day. You're not supposed to. I mean, there's no diet, the sort of healthy diet that's not in moderation. You should eat meat most days, I think, is what they recommend, but don't eat meat every day. Swap it out for other slightly different sources of proteins. And red meat again is something that sometimes is frowned upon. That's sort of for the dietary requirements. Then also you have if you're basing your diet on environmental reasons, then they say don't eat red meat, and then but still eating poultry is not the worst. If you're thinking about carbon emissions, it's the driving down the desire to eat cow is one of the main issues, and then eating poultry. And again, I don't think that it would have to take a whole societal shake-up that I think is it's uncultural. Maybe we're a meat-eating country, and I think that that's sort of something to accept. And I think that then you've got to take your personal opinion of, if you want to not eat meat for whatever reason, you want to be a vegetarian or a vegan, that's fine. But don't force it on other people. I mean, there is a peaceful protest. They're allowed to do. They're well within their right to protest. But I certainly would criticize, the narrative that they're running, that it's a kinder alternative. I mean, if you're brutally killing animals, then you're out hunting them with dogs, then that can be pretty cruel. But killing animals humanely, eating animals humanely. And sorry, I don't even think I finished. I got so sidetracked. I don't even think I finished my point. Those are the Native Americans. Obviously, they weren't. They ate meat sparingly, and the way they treated animals, rejogged my mind, was completely humane and kind. They weren't, from what I've read, they weren't particular hunters. They mercy killed the ones that, especially the sort of tribes that moved along with the buffalo or bison, the sort of the tribes that migrated alongside the herds, lived alongside the herds rather than hunting the herds. And then when there was an injured, or an animal which for whatever reason couldn't continue, it was then killed and consumed, and literally they try to use as much as they could, because that's the most efficient way. If and maybe that's the other argument, is that if people aren't going to go vegetarian, because I'm not a vegetarian, I have no intention to be a vegetarian, what you should be doing is eating more of the animal and encouraging people to eat more of the meats, that then, so nothing is wasted. And if you ensure that nothing is wasted, you live in a more sustainable um, environment. Now, that's, with their argument on face value, and the reason why is that you can get into a million other arguments with this circumstance, but I don't know any of the people protesting personally, so I will just name them and not accuse anyone of doing something. But is it a kinder alternative to not eat meat, but then to buy um, products, that are becoming more popular, like avocados and almonds, that are mass farmed, killing bees, especially as like 90% of the um, oh gosh, mind blank. 90% of almonds come from California, and I think they have a massive problem with almond farming and killing bees. There's deforestation in Mexico because of the desire for more avocado. There, I knew that they were livestock issues in Peru, I believe, because of the more desire to grow quinoa. Um, so, are you, is if the alternative is, well, you don't eat meat, but then you start eating mass imported veg from halfway across the world? I don't really think that that's a well thought out alternative. So, here's what you do: you eat local veg, you buy local. You've got the whole idea of shopping local, supporting your local shop. Well, eat as little veg from abroad as you can, and I know that Britain has obviously um, not the best. I'd say it's not the best for fruit. I think it's really good for veg, but fruit is sort of one of those things where I mean, I'm not a berry lover, so it's probably, from my personal opinion, very good for sort of growing berries. But I don't like them. I like apples, and I always buy British apples. I never buy apples from abroad. But yeah, I understand that fruit is one of those sort of situations. But if you are one of these people, and this is you may already be doing this. I'm hoping I'm preaching to the choir in this circumstance, but this also applies to everyone that's listening. Check where your veg is from, and check what you're buying, and do your best to buy in season British veg. Um, try and buy in season British fruit, and because if you want to help, I mean, it's not just this is both sort of political, sociological, and environmental benefits, in my opinion, from supporting the local. If that's all of those things combine, create a healthier ecosystem for the country, but then environmentally as well. If you are one of these people protesting the eating of meat, but then you buy, you're buying veg from, frozen veg that comes from Africa or South America, where a lot of the veg comes from. You've got to think about how sustainable that actually is if you're calling for sustainability and kindness, and you've got to consider these things. And I'm not saying these people don't, but I have spoken to, and I'm perfectly aware of people that say, well, yeah, everyone should be vegan, and then they're buying their fruit and veg, it's all foreign import, and they're saying, they're citing environmental issues and buying a ton of foreign imported stuff. I mean, I know avocados and almonds are still a major problem. I'm not too sure about quinoa, but avocados and almonds are a major problem because they're foreign imports, but also because of the detriment they're having on their local environment. So, you know, that's the first issue out of the way. The second issue, and something that I think requires a little less nuance than I had to provide for the first, is the Grand National protest, and then the response, because I think that, I mean, this is something that people aren't going to agree on. It becomes so personal. But I do understand what the protesters are saying. In this case, the first case I don't agree on, going vegetarian, but I agree on the second case. So to sort of summarise, there were 3 fatal falls at the Grand National, and prior to that even, a group of protesters, it was a large number, about I read 60, but I think it could even be higher. A group of protesters ran on to the course track, in race course, I believe, and then protested or tried to get themselves to stick themselves to things like there's like fences and stuff to stop the race. 118 animal protesters were arrested, 42 de-arrested, 60 remain in custody. Got there in the end. So they delayed it by 15 minutes, and then one horse fell at the first jump and passed away, which, I mean, was then shared on social media, which in terms of not was then shared, as in they were sharing the vid. I saw people on Twitter sharing the video and saying, well, this is what we're trying to prevent. I think optics not the best there. I understand what they're trying to say, but I don't like that sort of thing, and just was sort of shoved down my throat when it happened, which I really think is personally bad optics, because I think that if you it's one of those things where if you care about animals, do you really want to see that? Or people say, it's one of those things to see. I mean, it's not the nicest, but not the nicest to happen. And then the owner, the handler, the trainer, handler is the word. Actually said that it was their fault that the horse died, because they actually put him off, which may be true, partially true, but then to go to the wider point, okay, the protest, put one horse off. How do you go about explaining every single horse, death? They die a lot in racehorsing, and so the statistics here are from Nevin Truesdale. I have no idea who Nevin Truesdale is. He's the chief executive of the Jockey Club. So he says that you will never eliminate risk completely from sport. We can't ignore what happens in terms of the fatalities. We saw every fatality in racing is one too many. It says 99.8% of horses across all racing come back from their races safely. The fatality rate has fallen. So Racehorse Death Watch, which is a website that sort of compiles every single racehorse death, has a statistic, and the statistic is 2,602 deaths in 5,880 days. That approximate about 162 racehorses a year, and in Britain, die. Now, I will just say, and here's my take. Well, I will start off with an analogy that I hope is understood. Every year there's the Isle of Man TT. Now, if you've not heard of the Isle of Man TT, it's just insane motor racing around the Isle of Man, which is like they basically just go really really fast in an island. Like the Isle of Man is it's like in this around the island, um, on really really small roads, um, in a time race, essentially. So over 2 weeks. This year it's from the 29th of May to the 10th of June, and yeah, essentially it's I think it's biking specifically. Um, it's a mountain course, a 37.73 mile beast of a course carved up the island's public roads. And every year, um, people die doing the Isle of Man TT. I think there are about 5 deaths last year. Have a look at there's a big long there's a big long so in 2022 last year there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deaths. God, there's different events. There's sidecar. And there were no deaths in 2020. Oh, there may have been COVID. So actually, I'll ignore that. Let's jump the gun there. Yeah. So last year, there were 6 deaths. And people respond to this death as a father-son team that died in a sidecar crash. It sounds incredibly morbid, but the thing I will say is that with all motor racing, and this goes to Formula One, which Formula One hasn't seen there was a rally driver that died recently actually, but Formula One itself, I mean Romain Grosjean has been in the most horrific crash in terms of a near fatality, and that was a couple of years ago. But Formula One hasn't seen a death in the race since Jules Bianchi in 2014. So if you compare racehorses dying to Formula One drivers, the statistic is nowhere near. Racing drivers in general, I mean, there is probably a statistic, but again, I don't think it would be as high as that. Anyway, back to the Isle of Man TT. People die every year doing this race. There's 2 deaths in 2019, but 3 in 2018. But it is ridiculous. Like the Isle of Man TT is absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy. Like they're going at 200 miles per hour on literally like a normal country road. And this sounds, morbid, but this is the sort of defense that I've seen, not just people use, but people close to the people that have passed away say is that, well, when you sign up to there's 266 deaths overall at the Isle of Man TT. I've just seen the statistic. 266 deaths overall in its near 100-year history. So basically, more horses have died statistically in 2 years than all people have died racing the Isle of Man TT. It started in 1911, so it's over 100-year history. We've lost more horses than people in the Isle of Man TT. And what I'm getting at with this is that this is something that people sign up to. It's extremely dangerous, but everyone knows the risks. People of all motor racing know how dangerous it is, and it's the sort of adrenaline junkie thing to do. Now, that's by no means saying that these people should die. Like, you want to make every sport as safe for people, but the people have a voluntary choice to race or not, and these people choose to race because it's what they want to do. They have free will to do it. Now, racehorses, and I've seen people say, well, if a racehorse doesn't want to jump, it won't jump, and it will pull off, and it will stop running. And that is in an instant. In a specific race, a racehorse may choose to do that. But does a racehorse have a choice to be a racehorse? It doesn't. It didn't pick. People that are Formula One drivers or riders in the Isle of Man TT. They choose that career the racehorses don't choose to have a career as a racehorse. They're, it's like what they're solely bred for. So the sort of the level of statistics of death is one issue, but the fact is that they're animals. If it was people, if it was people dying, you can argue that they've got a choice. I don't really think the same argument applies to horses because they don't have a choice. They're being bred to race, by people for people, and whilst 99% of them have a lovely life, 1% of them was 99.8. So your 0.2% are still dying. It is a tricky one. There is a lot of horses that die. I mean, that's 162 a year is a lot of horses that die, and I think that it is one of those things that it can certainly be argued that it's unnecessary. And the reason why I say it's unnecessary is because again, I don't particularly see them having a choice in the matter. They don't get to say, well, actually, I don't want to do that. They get to stop if they don't want to make one jump. Overall, um, overall, it's not a simple thing, and I think that's something that I mean I don't watch horse racing. I can't remember the last time I watched horse racing. I used to watch the Grand National as a child, and I think I went to horse racing a couple of times, as a teen. But no, I've not. Don't really engage myself in horse racing. And no, and the second thing is I will say though is that the handlers, I'm sure they love their horses, and they also don't want their horses to die. So to play devil's advocate to my own point is that it is another thing is that they're not trying to kill their horses, but I just feel that it's one of those things to think about is that horses die um, at a high level, and you can see why people are against it. So I think I will just say that you can't say that this is a simple sort of people were stupid for protesting. There's definitely grounds for protest, and I don't think people are ignorant. The statistics are there in terms of animal death, and I really think that it is something to think about. But again, if you're not going to stop people from racing horses if they really want to. Obviously, the slogan I think is "You bet they die" to stop people from betting, so the actual sport goes down. But it's another thing that is just so cultural, and again, it's not like it. You can then say it's not like cockfighting where you're not trying to kill animals. You're not betting on animals being injured. You don't want the animals to be injured. You want them to make it to the end of the race. So definitely, like, there's devil's advocate points there, but I think that people should know that 160 horses are dying a year, and I mean maybe the owner of the horse that passed away has come out on the aggressive. That's maybe his own emotions at the horse's death. These people are emotionally attached to their horses, so I don't think that we can then say also that they're uncompassionate. They're uncompassionate. They're not killing horses, not charging horses into battle recklessly. Like we did for many hundreds of years in this country. But yeah, it is a tough thing for horses to die for the pure entertainment of people. So that is definitely something to consider going forward, and something I wanted to talk about because I don't think it's this clear. Oh well, everyone is uncompassionate that likes horse racing, or equally all of those people protesting are stupid and ignorant, because they don't cause the death of if you want to say that this year 160 horses are going to die, well 159 died without being spooked by protesters. Like you can't say this one, the only reason the horse died is because it was spooked by protesters. I mean, that risk has to be there for the horse to die in the first place. And that's the horrible thing of horse racing. And so be aware, if you are engaging with horse racing, be aware of the truth behind it, And if you are aware of that and then want to still actively participate in that, that's your own, decision. The people that breed horses and handle horses are aware. I mean, I'm sure they know the risk. Maybe that's why they get so defensive, because they don't need to be told when they, lose a horse that has a lot of sentimental value to them. But that's it. That's life. Just be aware is the most important thing. In regard to that issue, and then the second issue, second topic that we're going to get into is a crazy one. So going to talk about the leaks that were released, that have done the rounds on social media and now have culminated in an arrest. The document leaks regarding the Ukraine war, and I'm not going to be specifically talking about the Ukraine war. I want to, tie it into something broader. So I think that obviously the leaks have been denied, although we have Michael Clark, who is a lecturer at KCL, and defense and security expert, who was like, well, I think he said on Sky that it's no surprise if the leaks were true. Like, it makes perfect sense. So the leaks for the purpose of what we're looking at here, from March the 1st, 2023. At that time, the United Kingdom, I don't know why I said it that way. The United Kingdom had 50 members of the special forces deployed. The United States had 14, France had 15, Latvia had 17, and the Netherlands had 1. So NATO countries had 97 special forces troops deployed in Ukraine, doing something. We don't know what they're doing, but it's been speculated that it's intelligence, logistics, not in active combat. They're just there helping the military in sort of ways of intelligence. The first thing that really should confirm, and also the way that people have reacted to this, is it's not, people post hoax leaks on Twitter all the time. So I think that because the first thing that the government, everyone came out to do is say, oh yeah, they're wildly inaccurate and doctored, and people post doctored stuff on Twitter all the time, and there's never a big arrest made against them because they're I think the way that it was handled by the FBI, I think, indicates that these documents were very real. But that's anecdotal. What we certainly could say is that these assuming that these documents are real. Now I'm saying doctor rather than documents. Assuming these documents are real, they confirm that the Ukraine war is not only a war for Ukrainian freedom and independence. It's a proxy war, because again, it's trying to stop Russia, for the purpose of helping the Ukrainians, but also for the wider safety of Europe. And the war, by it's just a continuation of this same antagonism we've seen from East and West since the end of World War II. So as with all proxy wars, they have their local element, but they also have the broader element. So is it time we start looking at both what's often called the longue durée, sort of the broad perspective of history, as well as the the local current events type politics, and see this more as a continuation. I mean, dare to say a continuation of the Cold War, but definitely the sort of themes that we saw in the Cold War. The methodology has changed. The rhetoric of communism versus capitalism has changed, but the people that were at odds until the 1990s are still at odds today, and there was only a short break of only 20 years, if you want to look at it in the way that I'm about to frame it. So we know the leaks, we know that there are special forces involved. Either way, NATO are arming Ukraine. So regardless of special forces involvement, this is a proxy war. We can't see it as any other thing other than a proxy war. So let's have a look at, if we start to see things like the Syrian civil war. We look at the Syrian opposition to Assad. Who supported the Syrian opposition to Assad? Well, the United States did, the European Union did, the United Kingdom did. Specifically, we saw the France, United Kingdom, Italy, Netherlands, Germany support and arm the rebels. Who supported Syria? Russia, Iran, China, Belarus. If we're thinking about, and then we also supported the autonomous administration of Northeast Syria, which is Rojava, is a de facto autonomous region. The United States, France, UK, and Iraqi Kurdistan supported them. So if you think about the Syrian civil war, that's a proxy war. You've got the Syrians are fighting, for their own sides, and then you've got all of these foreign powers supporting the sides that they want to win. Sounds pretty proxy war-y to me, really. And then we also look at Yemen, and Yemen is a proxy war of Iran and Saudi Arabia. That's sort of the Arabian, Middle Eastern proxy war. But if you're starting to see things on different levels, look who's involved supporting Yemen and the Saudi-led coalition: the United States, the UK, France, Italy, and Germany. And who's supporting? It's the Hadi government is supported by Saudi, and then is the Houthi rebels? Yep, the Houthi movement and Supreme Political Council in Yemen. Who's supporting them? Russia, Syria, North Korea, according to Wikipedia, Iraq, and Iran. We've got some overlap, and this not particularly surprising. I mean, you can go literally. There's a Wikipedia list of people proxy war. So you've got the war in Darfur, in Sudan, and America have supposedly supported the SRF, the Sudan Revolutionary Front. They've supported the Justice and Equality Movement in Sudan, and the SLA, which is the Sudan Liberation Army. And the government of Sudan is backed by China, Iran, and Russia. But these names keep popping up, and it's not completely uniform. In Kashmir, for example, India is supported by both the US, Iran, and Russia, and Pakistan is supported by China and the Taliban, Saudi Arabia, and Al Qaeda, according to this Wikipedia page. But then also we have Ossetia, and the issue in Georgia, the two independent regions in Georgia, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Georgia is supported by NATO and Abkhazia is supported by Russia. South Ossetia is another one where we've seen active support by NATO, or probably armed support by NATO, and South Ossetia is supported by Russia. The list goes on in terms of how many people are, supporting who in these proxy wars, and obviously they're like proxy wars of proxy wars, because they all have their own level, and there is literally a Wikipedia page for the Iran-Saudi Arabia proxy conflict, which started in 1979 to present, and on the two forces, you have UK, US, and supporting to Saudi side, obviously this, you can't just draw neat lines. There's a lot of complication in that. But then on the other side of the line, you have China and Russia, and everything is more nuanced, and there is a lot more detail, and people that are experts in these areas can give you a lot more information than what I can give you. But what I can say is that the lines that drew sides in the Cold War haven't really um, changed anything. They're the same lines that we saw in the Cold War. We've got Russia and America at odds, China as well, and the United Kingdom are in it. France are in it a bit. Now you've got Germany in it who weren't in it. It's like it's the Europe BRICS divide for a lot of the case. BRICS being what Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It is these are continuations of proxy wars, and if you want to start, we need to start thinking about the longue durée. Russia had 20 years, maybe even less, to reset itself after the fall of the Soviet Union. But these lines really haven't changed, and that's something I think we need to start considering. So with the leaks of these documents, I think it is certainly time to start thinking about the fact that this opposition is still around, still very, very entrenched in our societies, and once we start to realize this, it's sort of you understand why there's so much antagonism in these circumstances, and why we end up supporting some of these sides. Well, it's because X supports Y, so we back up X and they back up Y, and you've got a proxy and a proxy war and a proxy war, and it's there are people's lives on the lowest level that are affected by this, and that's a horrible thing. So as always, that's something really important to take away. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and I hope that there are a lot of things that we can take away from the proxy war and the animal protests going on. And as always, I hope you enjoyed listening, and I hope to see you in the next one.